Dear Dementia Doctor, a few years ago I sat in your office as you delivered the devastating news. My loved one had dementia. It wasn't a surprise. Sadly, we were expecting the news, but what I didn't expect was the behavior I would endure as the disease progressed. You see, doctor, although you ordered more tests to determine what type of dementia it was, you never explained the hell that just dropped on our doorstep. Yes, I know that no two cases are the same, but it would have been helpful if you had let me know what to expect since I am the caregiver. I knew my loved one would be confused, forgetful, and struggle with words. After all, that was the reason for our initial visit. As I look back, I am truly stunned at what you never told me. You never told me what the mini mental state exam was measuring. I watched my loved one take it several times. You know, it's the one that starts with 3 words she's asked to remember and ends with her being asked to draw a clock. You never told me it carried a numbered score that ranged from 0 to 30. I watched my loved one struggle more each time it was given. You never told me it rated the stage of dementia as well as the spatial dysfunction that comes with the disease. You never told me spatial dysfunction would become an issue. It would have helped me understand what was going on in her brain and when her driving days needed to end. You never told me that dementia has a numbered stage system of 1 through 7, with 7 being the end stage. I know it wouldn't change anything, but from a caregiver's perspective, I could have gauged where my loved one was at. I also would have had a sense of what was coming. You never told me that my loved one would stop believing that she has dementia. I found out it is called anosognosia and happens to all dementia patients eventually. You never told me that my loved one would lose her reasoning abilities. It would have saved me countless arguments. I honestly thought my loved one was in denial. You never told me about sundown syndrome, also known as sundowning. I began to notice weird behavior as evening approached. The tiredness of the day's end was met with increased confusion, agitation, and aggression. Crazy stuff came out of my loved one's mouth. Frantically, she informed me that someone was trying to kill us both. I desperately tried to calm her as we were in a moving vehicle traveling 55 miles per hour and she was trying to open the door to escape. Thankfully, I hit the child-proof door locks in time. Then there was the time she freaked out because a man with a gun was in her room. It turned out to be a tree branch swaying in the wind. The streetlight had cast a shadow on her wall. I figured out that her wandering, pacing, and sleeplessness often accompanied this time of day. You never told me that her brain would disintegrate to the point where she could not tell the difference between reality, TV, and a dream. You never told me that my loved one would become incontinent and end up needing to be changed by me. You never told me that my once sweet loved one would become agitated, fearful, and violent enough to need police intervention. You never told me that my loved one would cry uncontrollably. Some days she just screamed and I couldn't calm her down. You never told me that my loved one would get to the point where she slept most of the day. You never told me that my loved one would have to be spoon-fed and forget how to swallow. You never told me that my loved one would push food away and refuse to eat. And when that happens, it is the sign that my loved one is about to die. I know you're busy, but at each appointment, if you could have spoken to me in a separate room away from my loved one, it would have been so helpful to me. When you told my loved one that she was doing great, she thought you meant there was nothing wrong with her. I had to fight with her for days after the appointment. In fact, she wasn't doing well at all. The great conversation she had with you was completely untrue. But you had no way of knowing that, and I couldn't correct her in front of you. If I did, World War III would have ensued in your office. Understanding the future of my loved one, however bleak it may have been, would have allowed me to consider where my limited ability to care for her would need to end. I could have planned accordingly for both of us. Much frustration and heartache could have been avoided. Caring for a loved one with dementia is as much about the caregiver as it is the patient. We need your help. Although my journey with this miserable disease is near the end, I know a loved one and their family member will be in your office today and receive the same soul-crushing diagnosis we received. But this time, things could be different. Doctor, would you please take the well-being of the caregiver into consideration this time? We desperately need your help. Signed, a dementia caregiver. This is not meant to be a slam against the medical community. I believe they simply don't understand what caregivers go through with dementia. It is a disease like no other, and caregivers look to their doctor for information. One of the biggest complaints I hear from caregivers is that their doctor hasn't told them what to expect. If you're a doctor who deals with dementia, I would love to talk with you about this.